I can still hear that phone ringing. 23 times it buzzed across my kitchen counter, trembling like a heartbeat. I didn't need to look. I already knew who it was. My mother never gave up when she wanted something. She'd been softening me for weeks with stories about redemption, about second chances, about how time heals all wounds. But what she really wanted was for me to let my sister, Ruth, back into our lives. Ruth had just gotten her driver's license reinstated. That was the wonderful news my mother couldn't wait to share. She spoke like it was a victory, like the past had been washed clean just because the state gave Ruth a plastic card again. But some things don't wash off. Years ago, Ruth drove drunk through a red light and hit a child, a little boy named Michael. He was 4 years old, walking home from preschool with his grandmother. He never made it home. Ruth served 18 months for a child's life. And now my mother wanted her to drive my grandchildren to the park. When I finally answered, my voice came out colder than I meant it to. "Hello, Mom." "Evelyn," she chirped. "Ruth got her license back this morning. Isn't that just wonderful?" I said flatly, "That's good for her, but she won't be driving my boys." I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. Less than an hour later, my mother was at my door, waving papers like proof of sainthood. Therapist letters, church references, sobriety coins stacked in a neat little row. "She's changed, Evie," she pleaded. "She's been sober for 2 years. She deserves a chance." I looked her straight in the eye. She got a chance, and a little boy lost his life because of it. The kindness drained from her face. "You're being cruel," she snapped. "She made one mistake. Are you going to punish her forever?" Maybe I was, but some mistakes don't get second chances. That night, I tried to let it go. I tucked my grandsons into bed, kissed their foreheads, and prayed for peace. But the next day, peace showed up dressed like manipulation. My mother's birthday dinner. That's when it all truly began. The whole family was there, pretending everything was fine. And then Ruth walked in, wearing that bright, forced smile. She jingled a set of new car keys, silver and shiny, like they meant salvation. "I bought a new SUV," she said, her voice shaking just a little. "It's got 7 airbags, the safest model there is. Maybe I could take the boys for ice cream sometime." Before I could react, my grandsons ran toward her, their faces glowing with excitement. My heart dropped. I grabbed them, pulling them back so fast they started to cry. Ruth's voice cracked. "I just wanted to do something nice," she whispered. "They're my family." I could feel the rage clawing its way up my throat. "Michael's grandmother would give anything for her family back. You took that from her. You don't get to play the good aunt now." The room went silent. My mother covered her ears like a child. My brother muttered that I was heartless, but I didn't care. I'd rather be heartless than bury another child. That night, I realised something chilling. Saying no wasn't enough. Ruth wasn't going to stop. Rehook. I thought the past was buried. But soon, Ruth would make sure it came knocking right on my doorstep. I thought standing my ground would be enough. I thought if I just kept saying no, my family would finally understand. But guilt is a strange disease. It spreads fastest among the ones who refuse to face the truth. By the next morning, the phone calls began again. First, my brother Henry, voice trembling with forced sorrow. "Ruth's devastated, Evie," he said. "She cried all night. She just wants to be part of your grandkids' lives again." Then came my father, a man who barely spoke to me before all this. He started texting Bible verses about forgiveness every dawn, like a preacher on a timer. Even my cousin Millie, who hadn't visited in 15 years, wrote me an email about second chances and the beauty of letting go. They all spoke like forgiveness was a family project, and I was the only one refusing to do my share. A week later came the ambush. It was supposed to be a simple dinner at my mother's house, drop off a gift, share some cake, and leave before the guilt could find me. But when I walked in, the entire family was seated like a jury, and there in the middle sat Ruth. She had that same bright, trembling smile, her hands folded over a purse she kept clutching like a lifeline. "Evie," she said softly, "I bought the boys something. She reached into the bag and pulled out 2 small toy cars. My throat tightened. You shouldn't have. They remind me of Michael, she whispered, eyes glistening. I thought, maybe this could be a start. I looked at her, really looked at her. The clean hair, the new dress, the forced calmness, all of it carefully arranged. And yet, under that mask, I saw it. The hunger. The need to be forgiven so badly that she was willing to rewrite the truth. Michael doesn't need your reminders, I said quietly. He needs peace, and so do I. That's when my mother snapped. She stood up, tears streaking her cheeks, and shouted, You're destroying this family. She made a mistake, Evie. Don't you dare act like you're perfect. Her words sliced through the air, sharp and trembling. My grandsons froze beside me, eyes wide with confusion. They didn't understand why their grandmother was yelling at me, why their sweet Aunt Ruth suddenly looked like she might crumble into dust. I gathered the boys and left. As I strapped them into the car, I could still hear my mother shouting from the doorway, begging, blaming, breaking all at once. But the real horror didn't start until the next week. That's when I saw Ruth's car again. A silver SUV, parked across from the school, right near the pickup line. My heart stopped cold. She waved from the driver's seat like it was the most casual thing in the world. The next day, I saw her at the park, sitting on a bench, pretending to read, but her eyes never left my grandsons. Then at the grocery store, the pharmacy, the church parking lot. She never approached, never spoke, just appeared, always smiling, always watching. I started writing down every sighting, time, date, place, like a detective in my own nightmare. My husband, George, installed a camera in my car after she followed us home from the library, twice, always keeping the perfect 2-car distance. One night, as I sat alone in the living room, I realized what she was doing. She wasn't trying to win forgiveness. She was trying to make me doubt myself, to make everyone else think I was crazy. And maybe that's what scared me most, that she was starting to succeed. But the next time Ruth showed up, she didn't just watch from a distance. She came for my family. And this time she didn't come alone. By the time spring came around, I was sleeping with my phone beside my bed and the curtains drawn tight every night. The boys had started to notice. My oldest, Jamie, asked one morning, Grandma, why does Aunt Ruth keep waving from her car if you don't like her? I told him she was sick, not in her body but in her heart. It was the gentlest truth I could give. One afternoon, Ruth's silver SUV followed us all the way home from the grocery store. She stayed 2 cars behind, pretending it was coincidence. George saw it too. He parked the van in our driveway, and we both sat there for a long moment, staring at her through the mirror. Finally, she drove off, slow and steady, like she was daring us to say something. That night, George installed another camera, one on the porch this time. I could see how tired he was, the kind of tired that goes past sleep. He squeezed my hand and said, We'll keep them safe, Evie, no matter what. But I wasn't sure safety existed anymore, not when the danger shared my blood. Then came the call that changed everything. An unfamiliar number flashed on my screen late one night. I almost ignored it, but something in my gut told me to pick up. Mrs. Mercer, a man's voice asked. This is Tom Grady. I was the prosecutor on your sister's old case. I froze. I hadn't heard that name in years. I think there's something you should know, he said, his voice low and careful. Something that never made it into the trial. The room seemed to tilt as he spoke. Ruth wasn't alone in that car the night of the accident. Her daughter was with her, 3 years old at the time. I couldn't breathe. Her daughter? Yes, he said. Her name was Lily. She wasn't injured, but Child Protective Services removed her after the crash. Ruth lost custody for 6 months. My hand went numb. I dropped the phone onto the table and it clattered like a gunshot. For years my family had begged me to forgive Ruth, and all that time they'd hidden the fact that she'd endangered her own child. When I finally picked the phone back up, my voice shook. Why didn't anyone tell me? Her lawyer had the record sealed, he said gently. Argued it would prejudice the jury. After I hung up, I sat alone in the dark kitchen, listening to the house breathe. The refrigerator hummed, the clock ticked, and somewhere outside, a car door slammed. I didn't sleep that night. At sunrise, I drove straight to my mother's house. She opened the door in her pink robe, smiling, until she saw my face. You knew, I said. You knew about Lily. She froze. Her hand trembled around her coffee cup. She's with her father, she whispered. In Arizona. It's better that way. Better for who? I asked. For Ruth's reputation. You let me be the villain while you hid that your daughter put her own child in that car. Her eyes filled with tears. She's changed, Evie. She doesn't deserve my grandchildren, I cut in, and you don't deserve to call what she did a mistake. I walked out before she could answer. I think that was the day something inside me broke, not from anger, but from realising I didn't have a family anymore. That night, as I tucked Jamie into bed, I thought about Lily. A little girl whose mother had risked her life, then lost her forever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that if I didn't fight harder, my grandsons would end up the same way, part of Ruth's damage. But just when I thought I'd learned every secret my sister had buried, another truth surfaced, one that turned my fear into absolute horror. When you live long enough, you learn that truth doesn't come all at once. It seeps in through the cracks, quiet, steady, merciless. After I confronted my mother, I went home and started digging through old files, newspaper clippings, anything I could find about the crash. It took hours, but eventually I found one tiny line buried in an article I'd never noticed before. The driver's child, aged 3, was in the car at the time of the collision and placed in temporary custody. There it was, plain as day. Proof that my mother, my father, even my brother had lied to me for years. That night, George found me sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers. He didn't say a word, just pulled up a chair beside me and read in silence. After a long moment, he whispered, they protected her instead of that little boy, and instead of you. I nodded. They called me cruel for saying no, but they've been hiding the real cruelty this whole time. From that day forward, I started keeping records. Every text, every call, every sighting of Ruth. She had turned her obsession into a routine. Sometimes she'd drive past the school and wave. Other times she'd park near the park bench and pretend to be on her phone. One evening, she even dropped off boxes on my porch, shiny new toys for the boys, all wrapped with tags that said, "From Aunt Ruth, with love." I took photos of every single one before donating them to a shelter. She wasn't buying forgiveness, she was buying entry. And my family, they helped her. My father sent me quotes about turning the other cheek. My mother told the church ladies that I was poisoning my grandchildren with hate. Even my brother Henry, who had seen her at her worst, called to say I was overreacting. But then Henry's voice cracked. He told me something that made my stomach twist into knots. The night of the accident, Ruth had been drinking at his apartment. He'd tried to take her keys, but she screamed at him, dragged her little girl from the couch and stormed out. He called our mother, begging her to stop Ruth before she got on the road. 20 minutes later, a child was dead. And my family? They covered it up, told the police she'd been drinking alone. My father even coached Henry on what to say. For years I'd wondered why the guilt never seemed to touch them. Now I knew. They'd buried it deep enough that only I could still feel it. The next evening, Ruth's SUV was waiting again, parked at the end of our street, headlights off. Still, watching. I walked right up to it, phone recording in my shaking hand. She rolled down the window, smiled that practiced smile, and said, "I was just driving by, wanted to check if the boys were okay." I stared at her, my heart hammering. "They're fine," I said, "and they will stay that way, away from you." Her eyes softened, almost sad. "You can't keep them from me forever, Evie. They'll see who you really are one day." It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. That night I called the police. They couldn't do much. "She's on a public street, Mum," they said, not breaking any laws. But I knew better. I could feel the law closing its eyes, just like my family had. And when Ruth crossed the line next time, I knew I'd need more than words to stop her. Rehook. Because the next time she came near my house, she didn't stay in the car. She climbed the fence and stepped straight into our lives. It happened on a cold Saturday morning, the kind where the air feels heavy, like it's holding its breath. George was in the backyard with the boys, helping them rake leaves into bright orange piles. I was inside making coffee when I heard his shout. When I ran outside, Ruth was standing in our yard. She'd climbed the fence. My heart stopped. She was smiling, brushing leaves off her coat, acting like she belonged there. "I was just helping," she said. "They waved when they saw me. I couldn't resist." "Get out," George said, his voice low and firm. The boys stood frozen, confused, scared, clutching their rakes like shields. Ruth looked at them with tears in her eyes. "I just wanted to see them," she whispered. "I love them." My voice came out like steel. "If you loved them, you'd leave them in peace." She turned to the boys. "Grandma doesn't understand. One day you'll know I was only trying to make things right." "Enough," George said, stepping forward. She backed away, but not before bending down to blow a kiss toward my youngest. That was it. That tiny gesture, the gall, the entitlement, the danger behind the smile, broke something inside me. I called the police then and there. For the first time, they didn't shrug it off. "Trespassing," they said. They took her away in the back of the car, still insisting she'd done nothing wrong. My mother bailed her out before sunset, but this time I had proof. Our lawyer filed for a permanent restraining order the next morning. The hearing was brutal. Ruth sat across from me in her grey suit, hands folded neatly, face soft and saintly. My mother sat behind her, glaring at me like I was the one on trial. Henry, bless him, sat beside me, pale and shaking, but finally ready to tell the truth. The judge was stern, sharp-eyed, and patient. She listened as we told everything, the stalking, the gifts, the fence, the lies. Ruth's lawyer spoke of healing, progress, and family unity. But when I handed the judge my folder, the photos, the notes, the police report, the videos, she went quiet. For a moment, the whole courtroom did. Then she said the words that saved us. "The permanent restraining order is granted." Ruth was to stay 100 feet away from me, my home, and my grandchildren. No calls, no gifts, no more pretending. But before the judge could dismiss us, my mother's purse tipped over. Photos spilled across the floor, pictures of my grandsons, taken from a distance, through fences at the park, even through our living room window. The judge froze. "Where did these come from?" My mother stammered. "Ruth gave them to me. I just wanted to see them grow." The room went still. The judge's voice cut through the air. "Then this order will include you as well, Mum." And just like that, both of them were banned. Outside the courthouse, my mother screamed that I'd destroyed the family. Maybe I had, but I'd saved my grandchildren, and I could live with that. Weeks later, Ruth vanished from our town. No more SUV, no more phone calls, no more surprises. The boys slept soundly again. Months passed before I learned she'd been arrested in another city for public intoxication. I didn't feel relief, only sorrow. Somewhere deep down, I still missed the girl who once shared my secrets, the sister who braided my hair before church, who dreamed of better days. But that woman was gone, replaced by someone who refused to face her own ruin. Now, when I sit on the porch watching my grandsons play, I thank God they're safe. That's all that matters in the end, their laughter, their freedom, their peace. Some people say forgiveness is the key to healing, but sometimes forgiveness isn't safety, it's surrender. And I've lived long enough to know. Love isn't letting someone close. Love is keeping them far enough away that they can't destroy you twice. I thought that chapter of my life was over, until a letter arrived years later, one that made me realise Ruth's shadow might never truly disappear. If my story touched your heart, my dear ones, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, because every story I tell carries a lesson, and there's always another waiting in the next chapter of life.